Yo everybody, what's going on? This is Keegan from Kman Reviews and I'm bringing you the next episode of Review Recall. This will cover most of the albums that were released in July. Of course, I didn't get to every single album. There was a lot in the last week of the month that I missed, so those will have to be pushed to the August video. But yet again, I am not doing it alone. I am joined by fellow music lover and one of my favorite content creators working today, Wyatt from Ferda Tunes. Wyatt, why don't you say hello?
Hey everybody, my name is Wyatt and I'm Ferda Tunes. I run a music-based YouTube channel as well, where I try to find various ways to discuss music on a more personal level, incorporating stories and memories, as well as just having as much fun as possible while diving into new artists and all kinds of stuff. I also did a few first reaction videos for some of the albums I will be talking about in this video, so go check out the Ferda Tunes channel if you like. Big shout outs and much love to Kman Reviews for letting me come on here and talk about some of my favorite releases this month. If you haven't already, subscribe to your boys. Let's get right into it.
And with that, we got a lot to cover, so let's just dive in. This was my first introduction to Soccer Mommy. I heard a lot about her through the years, but never fully listened to a project of hers, and this one was pretty solid. Great hooks, great production, often very soft, pillowy bedroom pop, but with the occasional outlier like Unholy Affliction. I really like this. Great album. A very solid record here. I haven't heard too much of Alexisonfire, despite me being Canadian, but this record may have swayed me a bit to check out some of their previous work. Love the contrast between the heavier, almost screamo moments compared with these softer companion pieces. Yeah, I like this a lot. A combination of the more grungy, hard rock tunes with some soft, folkier tracks as well, all of which managed to come off as both appealing to the ears and striking to the heart, and I really liked it.
I had very high hopes for Flo Milli's debut album, considering her debut mixtape from just 2 years ago was one of my favorite mixtapes of the decade so far. And while she didn't completely blow me away and shatter expectations, she most definitely did not disappoint. The highs on here are easily some of her best songs, her hooks are as catchy as ever, and her flows are seriously unparalleled. Bad bitch anthems all over this thing.
You know, at this point I'm just convinced Burna Boy is not my thing. His music has never really worked for me, even though he's working with some of my favorite artists on this. His own music, I mean, I'm 2 albums in on him now, and it just hasn't clicked with me. A very lovely piece of indie rock / indie folk, a lot of stellar yet sublime vocal efforts here. I've always had a soft spot for Mount Joy, and this is another great project by the group. Even with this album being pretty long, it manages to stay very entertaining and shows a lot of ambition Brent has. I really like this. Yeah, Fear the Dawn was the better album of the two, but this album highlights Jack's songwriting more and still manages to remain somewhat experimental with some jazz influence, some folk singer-songwriter, a little bit of blues as well. Even if I'm likely going to return to the predecessor more, this album definitely still deserves some credit. Wow, this was not an interesting listen. I love a lot of ENHYPEN's earlier singles. This was the first full project I've ever listened to them in full, and this was weird. Part spoken word, part boring pop rap, very forgettable listen all around, and just extremely disappointing from someone looking to get into their music a bit more. Wow, RZA's 2022 has been pretty garbage so far.
Lizzo came through with an album that is sure to satisfy fans, as well as keep those uplifting dance anthems poppin', while I find her infectious personality carries some of these songs, and while there's definitely some hard duds in this tracklist, which is unfortunate considering how short the album is, I would still overall call this a good album, with some of the best tracks being some of the best dance pop hits of the year for sure. I think I just expected most of these songs to be a lot tighter, considering how long it's been since her last album, but the production is almost always good enough to keep your hips moving, while some of the lyrics may keep your eyes rolling, depending on what kind of mood you're in. Still, it's not too hard to have quite a lot of fun with this one.
I was pretty satisfied with this. I like Chicago's jazzier take on rock music, made for some lively tunes. A tad too long, I think. The fun started to fizzle out near the last 2 tracks, but the bulk of this album was pretty fun. a very unique pop record, some fun experimentation to really differentiate from typical pop formulas. I can see this one being a bit much for some people, but as a pop fan who loves the wackier side of pop, this is a massive W. Huge ambition, strong, progressive yet punky melodies, tight narrative, and extremely consistent listen to boot, even being over 50 minutes. This was a massive surprise to me, but may just see year-end lists. Excellent stuff. Is it a 0 bad? God no. Is it still boring, one note, overly long, and not that memorable? Yeah, pretty much. Ooh, wow. Interpol continues to fall off more and more. Unsurprisingly, really. This is just pretty bland overall. It's good. But the people heralding this as album of the year... It's good. This is Onew's debut album here, and it's a pretty solid fusion of his very soulful and serene voice, while also having some more pop tropes, like the R&B rap beat on Beauty, and even cheery acoustics like on the closing title track. This is probably the most full and balanced version of Onew you can get, and I had a great time with this. I would just rather listen to JR's other project released this year. That one was just so much more substantial than this one, had a lot more memorable moments too. This one was just kinda okay, a little bit of a shame, honestly.
This one I did not expect in the slightest. Apparently a new mixtape from Rico Nasty, but even after just a few listens, I'm ready to say this might be her best project yet. If not, it's easily her most experimental and out there in terms of sound. She seamlessly rides over some insane drum and bass production, a lot of interesting electropop, and of course hardcore industrial hip hop. At the very least, it's an immensely interesting project with an insane sound palette, albeit all over the place, but in a very good way for me.
It is nowhere near as good as Act 1, which had some exciting and compelling experimentation. This has none, and it seems like its sole purpose is to cater to commercials. At least the sentimental cuts near the end are pretty alright. Oh, damn, I missed hearing Neo. It's been so long since I last listened to him, so to finally be reunited with his music, yeah, this still hits. Still as amazing a vocalist as ever, the R&B cuts are gems, and while I do think the record is a bit one note on the production level, I'm just very pleased with this. I love the original Nowhere Generation. It got a shout out on my year-end list last year. These B-sides are just as good, if not more so, because there's not a skip in any of these 5 tracks. Ooh, this is a unique album. It's got a murky, melancholic feel to it. Johnny's vocals feel almost otherworldly and help make the song feel hauntingly autobiographical. I wasn't crazy about any specific song on here, I'm just more happy it wasn't terrible. This is actually the first listen to metric for me, so I really had no idea what to expect, but it certainly wasn't clean, polished, infectious, and catchy as hell indie dance synth pop stuff. I'm now angry with myself for sleeping on them for so long. It is so weird to hear DJ Drama really hyping this tape up as he always does in magnificent fashion, only for Bada TD to deliver one of the most standard and uninteresting deliveries from a rap project this year. The only thing I can really compliment this on is solid melodies, which are often very catchy, but aside from that, this is just kinda sad. So Corti, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, is someone who I know via Ferda's Discord server, and they make music. They've been promoting the hell out of this album in particular, and I really like the bubbly, yet kind of frosted atmosphere this album paints. These kind of electronic, instrumentally driven albums tend to not do too much for me, or I need to be in a certain mood to fully rock with them, but this is a very comforting, kind of relaxing, and beautiful take on that. Give this album a listen if that sounds like your thing.
The Fly God himself returns with a very tight-knit new project, loaded with features from SD Knack and Stove God Cooks, who we know Gun and Stove make magic together. And as a huge fan of Westside Gun, This tape is pretty immaculate. It's just that classic aesthetic that I just cannot seem to get tired of. Yeah, it's very typical stuff from Gunn, but if you enjoy that, you'll enjoy this. Nothing totally new or mind-blowing, but great stuff as usual. He couldn't miss if he tried.
God damn, this album is great. It's a fun, jubilant mix of nu metal, pop, rap, and even some R&B tropes sprinkled throughout. So much charisma in these vocals too. It is a stellar record. I wasn't too familiar with this duo going in, but now consider me a fan. What a great album. Yeah, a very solid album from this Chicago-based collective. I wouldn't say it does anything mind-blowing bringing all these talents in for one album, but if you're into that kind of underground hip-hop, check this out. If you enjoy Beach Bunny's take on indie rock and power pop, you'll also probably enjoy this because it's really just more of it. Maybe with some extra production layers here and there, but all in all, it's really just the debut album, but more of it. It's an improvement from the debut on pretty much every aspect. What a Gemini thing to do, though. A very sweet record here. I've never been head over heels with Jack Johnson's style to actively seek out and listen to it, but it's pretty much always enjoyable while it's on. This one even a bit more so as he breaks out of his comfort zone a bit more. Solid album all around. Haven't been too invested in Super Junior at all, but this EP told me I need to change that as soon as possible. Densely packed with fun pop tunes, extremely memorable, and an all-around great time. Another underground hip-hop album here with a surprising amount of connections to the mainstream, typical trap production and beats, while still maintaining lyrically dense verses. Nothing incredible at all and started to sputter out over its 17 tracks, but an overall good listen. I kinda expected this to just be another emo, post-hardcore band, kinda falling off a bit, but this album was pretty great. I had a blast listening to this. Can't quite say I loved it fully though, some of the tracks did blend together a little bit too much, but still, very much recommended. Check it out. Conway just doesn't miss, man, I'm convinced. So this is an archival record of sorts, recorded back in 2000, 2001, around that time. Neil apparently didn't want to release it because it was too sad for the time. I don't know where the hell he was coming from with that, but the music is still pretty great. Comparing this to that last album, Set My Heart on Fire Immediately, is completely impossible as these are wildly different albums. But man, this one just blew that one out of the water. I love the gorgeous yet haunting soundscapes the album presents, a very compelling album that did take a little bit to properly start up, but once it got going, man, this album hits. So I saw the rapper I Am God promoting this Chicago hip-hop collective, figured I'd check it out, their debut record here, and I like a lot of the flavor and charisma well enough here, but man, the beats are all so moody and downtrodden. Even when the track tries to be a harder banger like the song Purely, it feels paper thin. Plus, this drags quite a bit too. I was very surprised multiple times how long the album feels. So, yeah, not too positive of a first impression, but if you're looking for that lyrically focused hip-hop, I'd still recommend giving this a shot.
One of my favorite electronic duos of the last few years return with a pretty awesome album with more than enough interesting instrumentation and production choices, from ritualized drum lines to tribal-like vocals. They didn't reach the, god tier consistency they did on their, near perfect last album, but I couldn't expect that. Still, their sound is really special, festival-type EDM with a very organic and euphoric feel to it all. A lot of world elements bring these songs to newer heights, and definitely comes off overall as one of my favorite electronic albums I've heard this year.
So this latest EP is just 2 extra tracks she didn't want to wait a few years to throw on an album, both acoustically driven, hence the title. And yeah, these are absolutely great as usual. I've always said that she works better under despondent, melancholic production, more so than the bops. Her husky, smokier voice just suits that style so well, and both of these songs do exactly that. Cannot wait to see what comes next. What happened to Uzi, man? The consistency used to be there. Even though I wasn't head over heels for Love is Rage 2, it still had and has, to this day, some bangers. But ever since Eternal to Take, it's just been so scattershot and unpredictable and often mediocre. I want to believe the next album's going to be good, but oh man, all those hopes are fading away. One of the most aggressive Shinedown albums I've heard in recent years, which is always a plus. A lot of people seem to be referring to the distracting lyrical content as the album's biggest flaw, but for me, it wasn't that big of a detriment, except for maybe America's Burning. But for the most part, I was pleased with this. Compared to the first course of The Inevitable, it's much less dense, but still packs the same vigor and character. In fact, I'd even go as far to say it's more concise than Part 1. A very great and enjoyable rap album. Check it out. Wow. This is bad. Like, shockingly bad. The mixing is garbage. The album is way too long, and the vocalist Arnel Pineda sounds like the most bottom bin Steve Perry ever. If he at least had a unique voice, it would make this album interesting, but wow, I didn't expect this to be so bad. You can probably expect this on my year-end worst list. Just saying. An extremely solid R&B tinged pop album here, very catchy, bouncy highs. The lyrics do weigh the record down a bit for me, but with bops this good, I can't complain. A very, very solid collective record here. I just kind of expected this to be boring, typical trap rap of the sort, but the differing MCs here all stand out, and they help keep this group mentality very balanced instead of just being swamped in with the A-listers. Yeah, I enjoyed this a lot.
Whew. My boy Keegan asked me to keep these mini reviews to under a minute, and I will try my best, but it is goddamn, it's hard to not just geek all over the place about Renaissance. Beyonce takes a full-blown turn into dance music for the majority of this album, with tons of sounds from various dance genres blending together: house, disco, electropop, afrobeats, of course R&B, with influences from 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s very apparent in the samples, and overall, like, I think it's one of the best dance albums I've ever heard. It's really shocking how well produced and arranged this whole thing is, with it being an hour-long dance album, and as usual with Beyonce, it's immaculately versatile with all kinds of twists and turns to keep the sound and energy interesting. And again, as usual, Beyonce delivers some of the most powerful and passionate vocals you may ever hear on record, period. I truly cannot say enough good things about this album. She dropped another masterpiece on us. What else can I say?
Love how magical and orchestral this album is. Haven't been too invested in Regina Spektor at this point, but I may just have to see what I've been missing. Very great album. Ooh, okay. Now, I'm by no means a Black Midi expert, so please take my thoughts on this with a grain of salt. It is a good album. I'd even go to some lengths to say that it's great. I do think Cavalcade is better though. Still, I like Group's vocals throughout this, maybe less so when he goes into his overly theatrical timbre, but it's arguably his most consistently good performance throughout the band's career. I also think Cavalcade felt more solid in its sound. Hellfire takes a bunch of inspiration from other genres, and as a result the whole listen feels a tad scattershot. Still, my second favorite Black Midi album. I may not return to this too much, but I look forward to seeing what the band is going to do next. I like the sounds and the overall sonic direction Conan tries to go for here, plus I think his voice is pretty good too, but it jumps around so sporadically, very little cohesion, and plus the songwriting here is also kind of weak. Not a favorite of mine at all. It has some nice production on it, and Bones is a competent presence behind the mic. But man, if you can remember something else memorable from this, you're a better person than I am. Alrighty folks, and that is going to do it for this episode of Review Recall. Thank you all so much for watching, and I want to give another quick shout out to Wyatt for being in this video.
Thank you all for watching. Again, nothing but love for Kman. Subscribe to the man. Check out my channel if you like. Subscribe to stay tuned, and much love.
Links to his YouTube channel and all the social media will be in the description, as will mine. Go check those out. And yeah, thank you all so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.